Tariq Melrose here. You ever watch someone confidently deliver a speech that contradicts everything they said last week? Well, that's not leadership, it's performance art. And today's act was avant-garde, to say the least. I've got the clips, the contradictions, and the commentary they definitely won't quote on the floor. Subscribe now, because if the truth is buried under spin, I'm showing up with a shovel.
When Republicans get up on the House floor and spew nonsense about laziness and benefits, what they're really doing is attacking working families, gaslighting the American people, and protecting billionaires. And tonight, we're going to rip apart one of the most absurd GOP speeches you'll ever hear.
Thank you so much, Congressman Cawthorn. I am so excited for your leadership on this issue tonight. Thank you for making time to address the American people. Mr. Speaker, there are three people who come to mind when I think of people who cannot even give their money away. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, do you remember when her donations were returned to her by members of Congress because they don't want to be associated with her? Harvey Weinstein and Joe Biden. Those three cannot even give money away. In fact, by July 3rd, 25 states across America will have rejected President Biden's federal unemployment benefit bonuses. I meet with organizations every day that request funds for worthwhile endeavors. Sadly, America is $28 trillion in debt and can't afford to spend the money on many of these worthy causes. But leave it to Joe Biden to try to spend money in a way that actually hurts our economy and is rejected by Republican and Democrat governors across our entire country. That's a special level of basement incompetency. We've got 9.3 million unfilled jobs, and I hear it back home. Businesses can't get people back to work because they are making more to sit at home on the couch. They would rather watch Dave Portnoy eat a slice of pizza. But then again, maybe that's not his viewers. Maybe it's more of the folks sitting back watching Joy Behar and The View cackle and demonize our country and all of our worthwhile efforts to restore dignity in this nation. The Biden regime is literally incentivizing laziness. But then again, they set that example on a regular basis, calling it quits in the middle of the day. When's the last time the president hasn't called a lid before his afternoon snack? In my home state of Colorado, many corporations are offering bonuses that small businesses can't afford. We're seeing massive signing bonuses from $10,000 to $30,000 for utility and HVAC workers, and that's simply unsustainable. According to the Colorado Restaurant Association, more than 90% of restaurants are having issues finding workers. I'm one of them. I've had employees say, I cannot work more than 2 days a week. I cannot exceed 12 hours of work because it will cut in to my benefits. That is un-American. Joe Biden is quickly becoming the greatest threat to small businesses since Fauci's fraud. While small businesses across my district, across America, are struggling to find workers, struggling to stay open, Joe Biden is struggling to stay awake. I'm calling on this administration to end these excessive federal COVID payouts and stop de-incentivizing work. Madison Cawthorn, Congressman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. And Mr. Speaker, I yield.
What you just heard was a GOP representative standing shoulder to shoulder with Madison Cawthorn. Yes, the same Madison Cawthorn who turned Congress into a late-night circus of conspiracy theories and culture war soundbites. This speech is a perfect case study of how today's Republican Party has abandoned reality in favor of Fox News talking points, and how they deliberately distort facts to demonize working Americans while covering for the wealthy elite. Let's break this down piece by piece, because every sentence from this rant exposes the Republican strategy: distract, distort, and divide. First off, they start with a bizarre comparison. They lump together Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Harvey Weinstein, and Joe Biden, three people who could not be more different in every possible way. That's not serious policymaking, that's playground politics. They're not legislating, they're doing political improv, for right-wing Twitter. Republicans know that smearing AOC plays well with their base, so they throw her name around like red meat, ignoring the fact that she's one of the few politicians actually fighting for working families instead of corporate donors. But then comes the economic gaslighting. They claim 25 states rejected Biden's unemployment benefit extensions as if that was proof of Biden's failure. Let's be clear, Republican governors chose to cut off help for struggling families in the middle of a pandemic, not because it was good policy, but because it was politically convenient. They wanted to sabotage the recovery so they could turn around and blame Biden for it. That's not leadership. That's cruelty, pure and simple. The reality is, federal unemployment benefits kept millions of Americans from falling into poverty during one of the darkest economic moments in our lifetime. They gave families the ability to pay rent, buy groceries, and stay afloat while businesses were shut down. But instead of acknowledging that, Republicans twist it into a story about laziness. That's their playbook. Demonize ordinary people who are just trying to survive while giving tax cuts and bailouts to the ultra-rich. And then we hear the line about $28 trillion in debt. Let's pause right there. Republicans only pretend to care about the national debt when a Democrat is in the White House. Where were these deficit hawks when Trump passed a $2 trillion tax cut for billionaires and corporations? A cut that exploded the deficit and gave crumbs to the middle class? Where was their fiscal responsibility when Trump spent billions on a useless border wall or when they tried to gut health care for millions of Americans? Debt only matters to them when they can use it as a weapon to block investments in healthcare, education, and working families. Then comes the insult to every unemployed worker, calling them lazy. That is a slap in the face to millions of Americans who lost jobs through no fault of their own. Let's remember, this wasn't about people lounging on couches. This was about workers in restaurants, retail, hotels, and factories whose jobs disappeared overnight because of COVID. Republicans insult them as lazy, while the reality is many of these workers were risking their lives on the front lines, often without proper protective equipment, while GOP politicians were hiding behind Zoom screens. They even mock people for watching shows like The View, as if ordinary Americans don't deserve downtime. But notice what they're really doing here. They're sneering at culture, sneering at women, sneering at anyone outside their ideological bubble. It's a classic authoritarian tactic. Define real America as only those who agree with you and demonize everyone else as enemies of the nation. And then the kicker. Joe Biden is quickly becoming the greatest threat to small businesses since Fauci's fraud. First of all, insulting Dr. Anthony Fauci, a man who dedicated his life to saving Americans from pandemics, is an attack on science, truth, and the very people who kept us alive. Republicans turned him into a boogeyman because they couldn't stand that the truth about COVID didn't match their politics. Second, to claim Biden is the greatest threat to small businesses is absurd. The Biden administration delivered the American Rescue Plan, which kept countless small businesses from collapsing, funded vaccine distribution that reopened the economy, and provided aid to restaurants, schools, and workers. That's not destroying small business. That's saving it. Let's also address this myth about people refusing to work. The truth is, when wages are too low and benefits are non-existent, people can't afford to take certain jobs. It's not laziness, it's economics. If you're a parent paying for childcare that costs more than your paycheck, working that job doesn't make sense. If you're risking your health for poverty wages, staying home on temporary benefits is rational. What Biden and Democrats are pushing for is a higher minimum wage, stronger worker protections, and expanded benefits so that work actually pays. Republicans oppose all of that. They want you desperate, they want you underpaid, and they want you divided because that's how their corporate donors profit. And here's the bigger picture. Republicans like to dress up their cruelty as tough love, but it's really just an excuse to funnel money upward. They cry about bonuses being offered by corporations, but those same corporations are the ones funding GOP campaigns. They pretend to care about mom and pop shops, but they vote for policies that let Amazon crush small businesses while paying zero in federal taxes. They're not pro-small business. They're pro-big donor, pro-corporation, and anti-worker. Meanwhile, Biden and Democrats have been fighting for child tax credits, infrastructure investments, affordable health care, and climate action, all of which help small businesses by creating jobs, strengthening communities, and giving families more money to spend. That's the kind of leadership that actually restores dignity in this nation. Let's not forget the hypocrisy here. They call unemployment benefits incentives for laziness, but they have no problem with billionaires hoarding wealth, no problem with corporations outsourcing jobs overseas, and no problem with politicians like Trump spending taxpayer dollars at their own golf courses. The GOP's outrage is selective and always aimed downward, never upward. And one more thing, notice how the speech ends with a cheap shot at Biden personally, saying he struggles to stay awake. That's playground-level insult comedy, not governance. Republicans love to mock Biden's age, but here's the truth. Joe Biden delivered the largest economic recovery in modern history, passed historic legislation on infrastructure, lowered child poverty, and led the country through a pandemic, all while Trump was whining about losing an election and pushing lies that led to an insurrection. If staying awake means tweeting insults at 3 a.m., America is better off with a president who works quietly and delivers results. This whole speech is an example of the GOP's collapse into culture war nonsense. They don't have real policies. They don't have solutions. All they have are insults, conspiracy theories, and an obsession with keeping working families divided. Democrats, on the other hand, are focused on solutions, raising wages, expanding healthcare, investing in clean energy, protecting democracy, and ensuring that every American has a fair shot at success. So the next time Republicans try to tell you they care about small businesses or workers, remember this speech. Remember how they mocked struggling families, smeared public health experts, and twisted the truth. And remember who actually delivered for the American people during crisis: Democrats. This has been Tariq Melrose, and you've been watching Tariq Melrose Vlogs. If you're tired of GOP lies, if you believe in protecting democracy, dignity, and working families, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us as we continue to expose the truth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.